a misrepresented history. But the idea that research in the science of consciousness all started in the 1990s is not quite right. In fact, many important neuropsychological findings were discovered prior to the 1990s, as we will go through them in the next few classes. In cognitive psychology, researchers have also thought deeply about what kind of computational architecture would support consciousness. All of this happened well before the 1990s. The false impression that it all came out of nowhere or that a revival happened just 3 decades ago, waking the science of consciousness from the dead, has led to a number of consequences. The first is that important research from psychology is somewhat sidelined. An emphasis is placed instead on physics. As we discussed in the last section, the problem of consciousness is often considered a challenge of how we can understand our place in the physical universe. While this is certainly an interesting and stimulating question, it is not so clear that it is really tractable at the moment. Instead, in psychology and in neurobiology, there are more straightforward questions that we can ask. We know for a fact that there are conscious and unconscious processes in the brain. The conscious ones are those that we know are happening because we experience them.
If you just stare at something and kind of feel what it feels like to be you, it feels a little bit like you're a thing inside a body looking out through the eyeballs, and nobody else on Earth will ever see the world from that position. This awareness of your own experiences, the awareness that you are having them, the awareness that you are having your own thoughts, makes up what we call consciousness.
The unconscious ones, we cannot tell what they are from introspection. Sometimes we don't even know if they have taken place. Before we ask why they are different, we can at least ask in what ways are they different empirically. Are they in different brain areas? Are they different in terms of the style of computation? These questions are not so philosophical and disorienting as the ones from a physics perspective. Sometimes people who work on these more empirical questions say they are looking for the neural correlates of consciousness, NCC. As in, they are just trying to find out what brain mechanisms may be associated with consciousness, without worrying too much about how we can explain the occurrence of subjective experiences. Not just yet. Not for now. We can save the hard questions for later, after we work out some hard facts carefully. This is often a good strategy. And importantly, not only may consciousness science benefit from psychology, psychology itself also needs the concept of consciousness. As we will discuss later on, in the clinic, we often need to understand how the conscious and unconscious minds interact. Ideally, tackling the questions from a physics perspective shouldn't distract us from these important empirical questions. Unfortunately, sometimes it does. And part of the reason is that the impression of the 1990s revival also induced a somewhat excessive level of excitement from the media. This has changed the nature of academic discourse in somewhat unexpected ways, as we will explain in a moment.